The conference phone blinked red like a warning light, while my boss, Matt, shoved a thick contract across the polished table. His cologne was too strong, making the small room feel even smaller. "Sign off today," he said, tapping the page with his gold pen. My stomach twisted into a knot as I flipped through the document. Buried deep in Section 7 was a clause that would destroy our profit margins within 6 months. The numbers didn't lie. This deal would bleed us dry and probably cost people their jobs. I capped my pen slowly, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. Then I slid the folder back across the table, my hand surprisingly steady. "Not like this," I whispered, meeting his eyes. His smile disappeared, replaced by something cold and sharp. "Then consider this your final warning," he said, each word dropping like a stone. The conference phone started humming, ready to connect. Outside the window, I could see my coworkers moving through the office, completely unaware that I was about to risk everything. My career, my reputation, maybe even my ability to pay rent next month. But I thought about the spreadsheet I'd built last night, those red numbers screaming danger. I pressed the speaker button anyway, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. This was it. The client team joined the call, their voices cheerful and rushed like they always were on Friday afternoons. Matt immediately launched into his performance, speaking with the confident tone of someone who'd rehearsed in front of a mirror. I watched the screen as the client's procurement lead, a woman named Beatrice, went completely silent whenever Matt pushed the risky clause. Her camera froze for just a second each time, like she was holding her breath. The other team members shifted in their seats, glancing at each other with tight smiles. Their silence was an agreement. It was the uncomfortable kind that fills a room when someone says something wrong at a dinner party. When the call finally ended, Matt spun his chair toward me, his face flushed. "You'll attach your name to the approval form," he hissed, pointing at me like I was a child. My mouth opened before my brain could catch up. "I'll attach my name to the truth," I heard myself say. The words hung in the air between us, and I watched his jaw clench. He stood up slowly, straightening his tie with deliberate movements. His office door was still open, and I could see people pretending not to watch us. The tension felt like electricity crackling between two wires about to touch. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably my mom asking about dinner this weekend, but I didn't dare look away from Matt's face. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop with shaking fingers and ran the financial models again, hoping I'd made a mistake. I hadn't. The spreadsheet glowed with red numbers that told a brutal story. Their so-called discount would completely destroy our margins by the third quarter and trigger a hidden contingency clause that basically guaranteed layoffs. I scrolled through the projections, my chest getting tighter with each row. I thought about my teammates. People like Tom, who brought homemade cookies every Monday, and Yara, who had 3 kids and a mortgage. This wasn't just about numbers on a screen. These were real people with real lives. I hit print and listened to the machine whir and click, spitting out page after page of proof. The analysis was clear, undeniable, damning. I stuffed the warm papers into my bag carefully, like they were made of glass. If I was going to take a stand against Matt, I needed ammunition, and now I had it. My desk phone rang suddenly, making me jump. It was just the IT department, asking about some routine update, but my nerves were so fried that even normal sounds felt threatening. I grabbed my coffee mug with both hands to stop them from shaking. Across the office, I saw Matt through his glass walls, already on another call, probably spinning this whole situation to make himself look good. I took a deep breath and saved 3 backup copies of my analysis to different locations. The next morning, Matt called me into his glass office with the blinds half closed, which he only did when he wanted to intimidate someone. I walked in slowly, noticing how the filtered sunlight made everything look gray and threatening. "Initial here," he said, not looking up, just tapping the signature line with his pen. The sound was sharp, demanding. I picked up the paper, pretended to read it again even though I'd memorized every terrible word, then slid it back across his desk so gently it barely made a sound. "No," I said, the word coming out quieter than I wanted. His eyebrow climbed up his forehead like it was on a mission. "You're replaceable," he said, leaning back in his leather chair with a smirk. My throat felt tight and my eyes started to burn, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Then replace me after I fix your mess," I said. His smirk vanished. For just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even a tiny bit of respect. Then it was gone. He picked up his phone and started scrolling through it, a deliberate dismissal. I stood there for another second, waiting to see if he'd say anything else. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Finally, I turned and walked out, pulling the door closed behind me with a soft click. My legs felt wobbly, like I'd just stepped off a roller coaster. That afternoon, I texted Beatrice from the client team, keeping it casual. "Coffee sometime? Off the clock." She agreed immediately, which told me she wanted to talk too. We met at a small cafe 3 blocks from both our offices, a neutral zone where nobody would see us. She arrived looking exhausted, with chapped hands wrapped around her paper cup, like it was the only warm thing in her day. "We're getting pressure from our side too," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure nobody was listening. "Management wants this deal closed fast, but that clause?" She shook her head. "It'll blow up during implementation. My team will be the ones stuck fixing it at 3 in the morning." I felt something loosen in my chest, the first clean breath I'd taken in days. "What would a sane deal actually look like?" I asked, pulling out a fresh notebook. She leaned forward and we started sketching ideas on napkins, our pens moving faster as the excitement built. Real solutions. Fair terms, something that wouldn't destroy either of us. The barista kept refilling our coffee without being asked, probably sensing we were in the middle of something important. Outside, the afternoon light was fading to that golden hour glow that makes everything look hopeful. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy for pushing back. Maybe there was actually a path forward that didn't end with someone getting crushed. I spent the next 3 nights rebuilding the entire proposal from scratch. My apartment was quiet, except for the hum of my laptop and the occasional car passing outside. I worked at my kitchen table, surrounded by empty coffee mugs and crumpled paper, rewriting every section to make it stronger and fairer. Staged deliverables that let both sides test the waters. Shared risks so nobody got crushed if things went wrong. Performance triggers that rewarded actual results, instead of empty promises. And a mutual exit clause if market conditions crashed through the floor. By 2 in the morning on the 3rd night, I had something solid. The numbers worked, the logic was airtight, and the deal was worth twice as much money by year 2 if we both did our jobs right. I named the file Bridge because that's what it was, a way to cross the gap between us safely. I printed it, my hands trembling slightly, and tucked it behind my keyboard like a secret weapon. Tomorrow, everything would change. My cat Oliver jumped onto the table and walked across my keyboard, leaving a trail of random letters across the screen. I laughed for the first time in days, scratching behind his ears. Even he seemed to sense something important was happening. I saved everything one final time, then finally crawled into bed at 3, my mind still racing with possibilities and fears in equal measure. Matt appeared over my shoulder the next morning without warning, moving too fast and too close. "You're still working on this?" he snapped, grabbing the Bridge document off my desk before I could stop him. He skimmed it with his eyes moving fast, barely reading, just looking for reasons to dismiss it. "We don't need clever," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "We need signed." Then he did something I'll never forget. He crumpled my 3 nights of work into a ball and tossed it toward my trash can like it was garbage. The paper missed and slid under my desk, landing in the dust. "Clean up your fantasies," he said, already walking away, his shoes clicking on the floor. I sat frozen for a second, my face hot with shame and anger. Then I bent down slowly, picked up the crumpled pages, and smoothed them out carefully on my desk. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Something had shifted inside me, something hard and immovable. He could throw my work away, but I wasn't going to let him throw away my team. Around me, the office had gone quiet. People were pretending to focus on their screens, but I knew they'd all witnessed what just happened. Tom looked over at me with sympathetic eyes. Yara mouthed, "You okay?" from across the room. I nodded at them both, then deliberately opened my laptop and pulled up the digital version of Bridge. Matt could crumple paper, but he couldn't destroy what I'd built. I did something I'd never done before. I booked a meeting with the client team and specifically requested that Matt not attend. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute before I pressed it. The response came back in less than an hour. Approved. Looking forward to your presentation. I spent the next day polishing Bridge until every word was perfect, every number checked and double-checked, every slide clean and simple. When I walked into their conference room, my laptop bag felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Beatrice was there with her procurement team, all of them looking curious and a little bit skeptical. I took a deep breath and started talking, laying out Bridge piece by piece. No sales pitch, no exaggeration, just calm math, operational logic, and solutions that treated their team like actual human beings instead of obstacles. The room's temperature seemed to change. People sat up straighter. The procurement leads started nodding. When I finished, there was a long silence that made my heart race. Then Beatrice spoke. "This is actually workable," she said slowly, like she couldn't quite believe it. Someone else added, "This addresses every concern we flagged internally." A younger analyst pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of my slides. The energy in the room had completely transformed from skeptical to genuinely interested. Beatrice looked at her team, then back at me. "Can you present this to our VP tomorrow?" she asked. Tomorrow felt impossibly soon, but I heard myself say yes anyway. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what would happen when Matt found out. He'd go nuclear. He'd blame me for everything. He'd probably try to get me fired. So I got up at 2 a.m, made coffee, and started documenting everything. Every email, every version of the contract, every conversation where Matt pushed the bad deal or dismissed the good one. I took screenshots, saved files, backed everything up to my personal cloud. I even recorded timestamps showing exactly when I'd worked on Bridge. All late nights, all on my own time, none of it on company equipment. If someone tried to bury me under blame, I'd dig myself out with a shovel made of truth. I created a folder labeled Project Files that looked boring and ordinary, but inside was everything I needed to protect myself. When I finally shut my laptop at 4 a.m, I caught my reflection in the dark screen and whispered to myself, "Keep breathing. You've got this." My apartment felt different somehow, like it had transformed into a command center instead of just a place to sleep. I'd learned something important from Matt. Even if he'd never meant to teach me, documentation was power. Every email had a timestamp. Every edit had a trail. Every conversation could be verified. I might not have his title or his authority, but I had something better. The truth, backed up in triplicate. I set 3 alarms for 6 hours later and finally let myself rest. Matt found the calendar invite Monday morning. I watched his face turn red through his office window as he read it on his screen. He stormed over to my desk, moving so fast that people actually stepped out of his way. "You set a meeting without me?" he demanded, his voice loud enough that the whole floor could hear. My palms were instantly sweaty, but I kept my voice level. "They asked for me specifically," I said, which was technically true. He laughed, but there was no humor in it, just pure contempt. "You think you're the closer? You think you're the expert?" He pulled out his phone right there and forwarded himself into the meeting invite, then changed the title to Final Contract Approval. I watched him type, my stomach sinking. But then I had an idea. As soon as he walked away, I went back into the calendar, re-uploaded Bridge as an attachment, and changed the meeting description to include Reviewing Risk-Aligned Framework. If I had to share the room with him, I'd at least control what documents we discussed. Small victories. My desk phone rang almost immediately. It was Beatrice, her voice low. "Just saw Matt added himself to tomorrow's meeting," she said. "Don't worry. Ashley specifically wants to hear from you. We've got your back." Those last 4 words hit me harder than I expected. I'd been fighting this battle alone for so long that I'd forgotten what support felt like. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice cracking slightly. After we hung up, I allowed myself exactly 30 seconds to feel relieved before diving back into my presentation prep. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock on Tuesday. The client's vice president, a sharp woman named Ashley, joined along with 2 of her analysts. She looked like she'd been working for 36 hours straight, with dark circles under her eyes and coffee stains on her blazer. I started my presentation with shaking hands, clicking through slides that I'd rehearsed a dozen times. I told the story simply. Bridge would mean fewer system crashes, fair incentives for both teams, and less collateral damage when problems happened. Because problems always happened, that was just reality. When I finished, the silence felt like it lasted forever. I could hear the air conditioning humming. Then Ashley nodded once, slowly. "This is the first proposal I've seen that treats our people like people," she said quietly. I felt something bright and warm spread through my chest. Matt immediately cleared his throat, loud and deliberate. "We already have an approved version ready to sign," he said smoothly, gesturing at his leather folder. Ashley turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "Approved by whom?" Matt started talking fast, using big words and corporate phrases that didn't actually mean anything. But Ashley just stared at him, waiting for a real answer. When he finally stopped talking, she slid my printed copy of Bridge back across the table toward me. "Send this to me directly," she said, and then made a point of reading my email address out loud so everyone heard it. "I want this version." Matt's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, my team and I will work together to finalize all the details," he said, already trying to take credit. But I wasn't going to let him erase me this time. "I'll send it to you this afternoon," I said, looking directly at Ashley. Matt's jaw tightened, and I saw a muscle twitch in his cheek. The meeting ended 5 minutes later. As everyone filed out, Matt grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to stop me. "We need to talk," he said through gritted teeth. I pulled my arm away gently but firmly. "Nothing to talk about. I'm just doing my job." Less than an hour later, my computer pinged with an email from HR. My heart dropped. The subject line read, "Urgent, behavioral concern." Apparently, someone had filed a complaint about my insubordination and unauthorized client contact. I clicked through the attached screenshots and felt sick. They were snippets of my messages to Beatrice, but edited to remove all context. Sentences that looked perfectly reasonable in full conversation now looked sneaky and dishonest. This was Matt's work. I knew it immediately. I grabbed my folder of documentation and walked straight to HR, my legs feeling shaky, but my mind clear. The HR representative, a middle-aged guy named Felix, looked uncomfortable as I entered. "I need to show you the full context," I said, opening my folder and spreading everything across his desk. Complete email chains, meeting notes, the client's actual responses. Felix read through it all, his expression shifting from skeptical to surprised to something like respect. "We'll note this," he finally said, "and document everything going forward." "Already am," I answered, gathering my papers back up. Matt wasn't done fighting. The next morning, he did something I didn't think even he would try. He sent the original bad contract to Ashley, with final terms in giant letters in the subject line. He CC'd the entire executive board. My phone buzzed with the email notification, and for a second I thought I might throw up. But then, like a miracle, my phone buzzed again. Ashley had replied to all. "We will not be proceeding with this version. Our team is working from the risk-aligned framework presented yesterday." Then she did something that made my hands shake so hard I had to put my coffee down. She put my name at the top of her response. Per our discussion with Casey, we're moving forward with Bridge. My name, right there, in an email to our entire board. I stared at my screen, reading it over and over, making sure it was real. Matt's attempt to override me had backfired completely. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at my ceiling and let all the fear catch up to me. What if this all fell apart? What if Matt found a way to destroy my career? What if I'd misread everything and I was actually the one in the wrong? I thought about my rent, about my student loans, about how my mom had worked 3 jobs to put me through college. I thought about how small I felt in conference rooms full of people in expensive suits with fancy titles. My phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. I could still back down. I could apologize to Matt tomorrow and let him take control again. It would be easier, safer. But then I thought about Tom and Yara and everyone else on my team. I sat up, opened my laptop in the darkness, and rewrote the executive summary one more time. I made it shorter, clearer, impossible to misunderstand. If fear was going to ride alongside me, it could at least help me be more careful, more thorough. Better. I saved the file and finally fell asleep at 3 in the morning. The CFO, a woman named Bryn who usually stayed locked in her office doing spreadsheets, stopped by my desk the next day. She moved casually, like she just happened to be passing by, but I knew better. "Matt said you were being difficult," she murmured, glancing around to make sure nobody was listening. Then she looked directly at me. "Then I read your deck." Her expression softened just slightly. "Keep going." Before I could respond, she slid a yellow post-it note across my desk and walked away. I waited until she was gone before looking at it. Written in neat handwriting were 3 metrics: client retention rate, implementation cost, and timeline to profitability. These were the numbers the board cared about more than anything else, more than egos, more than internal politics, more than Matt's reputation. I spent my lunch break reworking the executive summary again, this time building everything around those 3 metrics. By the time I finished, even the formatting looked confident. I felt something shift in my chest. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. 2 days later, Ashley called me directly. Not Matt, just me. "We love your framework," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "But our legal team wants to add something. An upside clause. Double the payout if we exceed the performance KPIs 2 quarters in a row." I pulled up my spreadsheet, my mind already racing through the math. If we staged the deliverables correctly and hit our targets, we could absolutely exceed those KPIs. The numbers would work. We'd earn that doubled payout fairly. "We can do that," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. But Matt was apparently listening from his office. "Absolutely not," he shouted, loud enough that I heard him through 2 walls. I turned my chair toward his office, suddenly feeling braver than I had in weeks. "Absolutely yes," I called back, with the right constraints. There was a pause. Then Ashley laughed. Actually laughed. "I like her," she said. "Send me the constraints by tomorrow." I hung up feeling like I'd just won something important. Matt printed out my latest draft the next morning, and I watched through his window as he attacked it with a red pen. He crossed out entire paragraphs, rewrote sections, and added clauses that made no sense. When he finished, he attached it to an email addressed to the board, with my name listed as the author. My stomach turned to ice as I read what he'd sent. His changes would sabotage the entire deal on purpose, making it impossible to hit those performance targets. He wanted me to fail publicly so he could tell everyone he'd warned them about me. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, but I blinked them away. Then I remembered something: document metadata. Every change in a digital file leaves a fingerprint. I opened the original document, pulled up the revision history, and exported a version comparison showing every edit. Matt's username appeared next to every single destructive change, with timestamps and everything. I attached the comparison to an email to Bryn with a simple subject line: urgent, unauthorized contract alterations. Then I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The emergency board meeting was called for Friday afternoon. When I walked into that long conference room with its heavy wooden table and leather chairs, I felt like I was walking into court. Matt was already there, talking fast to anyone who would listen, spinning his version of events like he was weaving a spell. He barely paused when I sat down at the far end of the table, but Bryn caught my eye and gave me the smallest nod. When Matt finally stopped talking, Bryn opened her laptop and connected it to the big screen. "Casey has some information the board needs to see," she said calmly. I opened my folder, my hand steadier than I expected. Then I walked everyone through it. The math showing why the original deal was dangerous. The client's own words requesting bridge. The risk controls built into every clause. The upside potential of the double payout. And finally, the document comparison showing every change Matt had made, changes designed to make the deal fail. A board member I'd never spoken to before leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Why would anyone insert changes that guarantee failure?" he asked quietly. Matt went pale. I didn't say anything. I just let the question hang in the air. Bryn clicked through the revision history on the big screen, and Matt's username lit up next to every sabotaging edit like a flashing sign. His face went through 3 different colors: pale white, then flushed red, then pale again. Those were exploratory notes, he stammered, his voice cracking slightly. Not final versions. I'd been waiting for this. I slid a printed email across the table, letting it glide over the polished wood until it stopped right in front of the board chair. This is Matt's email from this morning, I said quietly. Subject line, final contract with board approval. The timestamp was right there in black and white. The board chair read it, then looked up at Matt with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then he turned to me. Can your team execute bridge by Monday morning? He asked. Every eye in the room turned to me. My throat felt dry, but my voice came out clear and strong. Yes, I said. And I meant it. Matt pushed back his chair, the sound harsh in the quiet room. This is ridiculous, he muttered, but nobody looked at him. The meeting was over. We launched bridge on Monday morning at 9. I'd spent the entire weekend building a war room out of a tiny conference space, covering the whiteboard with handwritten KPIs like they were commandments carved in stone. My team rallied around me. People I'd worked with for years who'd been just as frustrated with Matt's recklessness. We divided tasks, set up daily check-ins, and created a tracking system so detailed that we'd know within hours if anything went wrong. The client signed officially at noon, the upside clause intact, and suddenly everything was real. 6 weeks later, we hit the first set of targets. My phone buzzed with a delivery notification, and I went downstairs to find a box of cupcakes from Ashley's team. The note read, "For the first time in 2 years, my team actually slept through the night. Thank you." I kept one cupcake on my desk for 3 days like a trophy before finally eating it. Then I erased the old KPIs from the whiteboard and wrote the next set of targets higher up. We had momentum now, and I wasn't letting go. Matt wasn't finished yet. Even though he'd been humiliated in front of the board, he still had some power left. He started using it to sabotage my team in small ways, rerouting approval requests so they'd get stuck in bureaucracy, forgetting to sign off on resource allocations, suddenly requiring 3 levels of authorization for things that used to take 1 email. I watched it happen, my frustration building, but I didn't explode. Instead, I created an impact log. A simple spreadsheet tracking every delay, every missing signature, every bottleneck. Next to each item, I noted exactly how many hours it cost us and how we worked around it anyway. Every Friday, I sent that log to Bryn and to Ashley, always keeping my tone professional and factual. For transparency, I'd write an email. We're still on track despite these challenges. The log turned Matt's sabotage into a spotlight on his pettiness. By week 3, Ashley replied, "Authorize anything Casey's team needs. Direct approval." The bottleneck broke. Matt's last bit of power evaporated, and we kept moving forward. The second quarter ended with numbers that felt impossible. We didn't just meet the KPIs, we shattered them. Every metric was solidly in the green, some by margins we hadn't even dared to hope for. The upside clause triggered automatically. Our payout doubled. When the finance department sent me the confirmation email, the message was just a string of exclamation points followed by, "How did you do this?" I saved that email. Ashley's CEO requested a meeting with the architect of this deal, and when Matt tried to add himself to the attendee list, Ashley's assistant sent back a polite but firm correction. "This meeting is specifically for Casey." I walked past Matt in the hallway on my way to that meeting. He didn't say anything. Didn't even look at me. Just stared straight ahead like I was invisible. But this time, being invisible felt different. It felt like I was the one choosing it, not having it forced on me. I walked into the CEO's office with my head high, and for the first time in my entire career, I didn't feel small. The board convened 2 weeks later. No emergency this time, just a scheduled review, but everyone knew what was really happening. They asked Matt to explain the document tampering, the resource blocking, the pattern of behavior that had nearly destroyed a major client relationship. He tried to spread blame like he was dealing cards, pointing fingers at budget constraints, at miscommunication, at me for being overly ambitious. But Bryn was ready. She slid a final packet across the table, a complete record of everything. Our outcomes with Bridge, the client's glowing endorsements, the detailed documentation of Matt's interference. The board chair, a silver-haired man I'd only seen in company photos, read through it all with an expression that got colder with each page. "Matt, We're parting ways, he said finally. Effective immediately. Matt's eyes found mine across the room, and for just a second, I saw him searching for something. Pity, maybe, or satisfaction at his downfall. But I had nothing left to give him. No anger, no triumph, just a quiet sense of relief so enormous I could finally breathe all the way down to the bottom of my lungs. The board offered me Matt's old position, but I didn't want his office with its half-closed blinds and power games. Instead, I took a seat at the end of the strategy table and pulled my whole team in with me. We spent the next 3 months implementing Bridge company-wide, training other departments, showing them how to build deals that actually worked for everyone involved. Slowly, the culture started to shift. People began telling the truth in meetings, instead of hiding problems. Ashley's handwritten note still sits taped to my monitor. Thank you for treating our people like people. On my last night in that tiny conference room that had been our war room, I stood at the whiteboard one final time. I looked at all those KPIs we'd hit, all those targets we'd exceeded, all that proof that doing things right could actually work. Then I walked past Matt's old glass office. The blinds were wide open now, the desk completely clean, ready for whoever came next. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. I just stood there for a long, quiet minute, feeling the weight of being underestimated finally lift off my shoulders, like stepping out of shoes that had been too tight for years. Then I turned off the lights, locked the door on the version of me who'd needed permission to do the right thing, and went home.